Good afternoon, and welcome to the Book Flood podcast brought to you by goldenlibraries.com. I am your host, Tom Nixon. My guest this week is Shawn Thrasher, president of the California Library Association. Shawn has been a librarian for almost 30 years. He has worked as a library page, a library clerk, a children's librarian, a teen librarian, a cataloger, and assistant director, and is currently director of Ontario City Library in Ontario, California. Welcome, Shawn. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello. This is exciting.
Oh, good. I have some questions that we've talked about. Um, let's start a little bit. You've had just about one of every job, it seems.
I have.
Was that the
Yeah, I started. I took a library class in high school, and I remember filing library card catalog cards was one of my jobs, and putting away books. And then in college, I had a work study job as in the library, where I checked people's books out. I think I was probably the worst librarian, though. All I wanted to do was talk to my friends, and I used to get kicked out of the library all the time in high school because I loved to talk. So, um, but then I got a degree in English, and I could not find a job at that time. It was 1993, and I was working as a medical records clerk. And I decided I would go back and get my master's degree in library, and that was like 1997, and I've been a librarian ever since.
and where did you go for your library degree?
So I'm from Kansas originally. I live in California now since 2001, but I went to Emporia State, which is a library school in Kansas.
Ah,
And back in those
yes.
days, there was no online school. One class I took was an online class. The rest was in person. So I was living in Wichita, Kansas, and driving about an hour and 20 minutes to class every weekend.
So was it always your plan to work your way up to being a library director?
Oh, absolutely not. If you had if you had asked me, my two things I never wanted to do was be a library director and be president of California Library Association. Yet here I am. So
Here you are. Well, you just never know what life brings you,
you
do you?
know.
Uh, what are some highlights of your career? Clearly, you're a director of a library now and president of CLA, but what else you got?
I have been in Ontario for 13 years. I started as
Mm.
assistant director and now I'm director. And I think probably my a couple proudest achievements, the things I'm, the most excited about, is our makerspace. We have it's called Lightspeed. It's 3D printers, a laser cutter, robots. And, if you'd asked me when I was a little baby librarian long ago that I would, have a room with robots that people could play with, I would have thought you were crazy. But we have a really, really cool makerspace. And then we have a Veterans Resource Center that's
Oh,
really nice. Like, we've set aside a corner of our library for it. It has veterans coming in and their families who can get assistance on how to navigate the Veterans Administration. And right now, I have a librarian who's in charge of it. His name is John, and he's doing a great job encouraging veterans to come in and making connections in the community. So, those are probably the two things that I'm most proud of in my career.
I think I may have lost you.
Am I
Oh, there
there?
we go. Yes, you're here. No, the idea of a veteran center is amazing. Now, is that run by a librarian or run by a social worker or run by?
We have a special populations librarian is what we call him, and he makes the connections in the community. He finds volunteers, so he kind of oversees the program.
Nice. Very cool. So, I want to talk a little bit about the California Library Association. How long have you been a member of that?
Oh my gosh, I would say at least 10 years.
Mm.
I was when I moved to California, I was more involved in the American Library Association. But honestly, it is a lot more expensive to fly back to all of their conferences. And I slowly changed my affiliation, I guess, from ALA to CLA. And so I
Mm.
would guess 10, oh, no longer than 10. Time flies. It's probably more like 15.
Wow, long time. And how did you become involved? You just started going to conferences, or?
I was always going to conferences at the beginning, and then I can't remember what I presented on, but I know I presented at least one conference back in the day. And then my boss at the time was president of CLA, and we were really involved for her conference because the president gets to, that's their year to do conference. So when your boss
uh,
is the president, you're really involved in their conference. And then after you're president, you're the next year you're in charge of the nominating committee. That's one of the jobs of the former president. So she
mm,
came to me and she said, "Would you like to run for board?" And that was 2018. I was like, "Sure, I would do that." And I got on board. And then after that, I ran for secretary and then president.
very nice. This is interesting for me because I live on the other side of library world. I'm a retired school librarian, teacher librarian.
Oh yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
and so it's a very different world in some ways, and yet
Yeah.
in other ways not so much. But
Yeah. There's like
definitely,
that Venn diagram where there's some things that are similar, but you have your own special things on the outsides.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. So what has being on the board done for you career wise? Has it helped in that regard, or?
I think it's given me more confidence. It definitely has increased my like public speaking skills and kind of that, I always know how to get along with people. And when you're an administrator, you have your own team that you're, responsible for. And I think being on a board and then secretary and president is that kind of next level of
Mm,
like working with people that you don't necessarily have responsibility for. You can't tell them what to do, but trying
right.
to come together as a team and work on stuff together. I think it's really taught me a lot about that.
Yeah. Supervising volunteers. That's
Yeah.
a tough go for sure. Uh, what does CLA do for its members?
So I think the number one thing is kind of advocacy, and it's kind of when I joined CLA, I did not know this. It took me a while to figure this out, but we work with legislators, and the state library that to on bills that impact librarians, and
Mm,
also a lot of them, the grants that flow down to all of our different libraries are us working with legislator and the state library. So I think advocacy is probably our number one thing, but it's kind of hidden. We do have a lobbyist that CLA pays for that works up in Sacramento and really, makes those connections for us that then help us so much later. But I don't think everyone who's in CLA realizes that all the time. But I'm always like,
mm.
this is what we do. The other thing we do is education. Obviously, we put on a yearly conference, and then in the spring we do something called spring flings. So we have interest groups. So, for example, I am also the chair of the management interest group, and so in last spring we
Oh,
put on a program, a Zoom on AI. And so those are education is a really big aspect of CLA. And then I think networking, like just getting to know your colleagues throughout the state. It's a big state. And
it
so
is.
CLA is the way that you get to know people from around the state. One of the ways that you get to know other people from around the state because you work with them on interest groups or you're presenting at conference. A lot of times what happens is you may put in a proposal for conference and somebody else puts in a similar proposal and they combine you up together. So it's the way you get to really know people too. So those are kind of the three things I think.
I really like that idea. I should tell someone about that.
Yeah,
That
I
that
mean,
that's interesting.
instead of
Um,
saying no, you say yes, and you get more people.
right. Which I think is a really good thing because if nothing else, you're building the next generation of
Yeah,
presenters at conferences.
which is
Uh,
really important. I think. Well, that is something probably CLA does too. Is helps that new generation of librarians coming up kind
mm,
of helps them figure out how the profession works.
right, because it can be an odd profession in some ways, and
Oh yeah.
and lately really odd.
Oh, 100%. And it isn't. I mean, it isn't anything what people think from the outside. And there are students who get into the library, go to library school, and it's not exactly what they thought it was going to be. And so I think
Right.
CLA gives opportunities for us to mentor and assist in that launch into the profession.
You mean you don't get to read books all
Yeah, I
day
wish.
and
I
right?
absolutely wish. I can't
When
remember
that
the last.
job comes up, I'm in.
Yeah, me too.
Oh my. When is your next conference?
October 17th through the 19th, so about 6 weeks in Pasadena.
Oh, nice location for sure.
Yes, very, very nice.
So, any conference highlights you'd like to share?
So my theme, every president has a theme, and my theme is mental health. So
Oh, good.
it's balancing act shelf care and self care, and so it's both mental health, like for you as a librarian or library worker. That's kind of the self care, and then also mental health for our patrons. So that would be kind of the shelf care, and we have a yoga instructor coming in on Friday of conference, once in the morning and once in the evening,
Nice.
to kind of teach people how to do yoga in their offices. I have a college professor coming to talk about how music can be healing, used for healing purposes and mental health purposes. Uh, Unlike any conference I've seen in a long time for CLA, we have 2 days of authors. So Friday, in our expo hall, we'll have a stage, and then throughout the day there will be California authors where people can go talk to them and then get books signed. And then the next day, Saturday, in the morning, we have more authors. I do not know their names yet. They are going to be. I will find out September 1st.
Oh,
So I don't. That's American Library Association does that, but it's the first time I've seen it like this at CLA. So I'm really excited about that.
CSLA does that as well because they have well, everybody has, but they get all the authors for they have a CYRM banquet dinner,
Uh huh.
California Young Reader Medal for those who don't know, which is always on, I think, the Saturday evening. Um, it's nice. It builds that capacity in librarians to know who's writing books.
Oh yeah, totally. And at the end of the day, we have technology and we have maker spaces and et cetera, but a lot of us still got into this because we love books. And
Right.
so this like candy for librarians, you're going to go learn stuff, but also it's fun to go see authors as well.
So, has Ontario had any of the book banning issues that seem to be so many places these days?
We've had a couple and they didn't really go anywhere. The last one we had was a which none of them were political in nature. Um, but the last one was a child was reading a book and brought it up to her mom and said, "I don't think this is appropriate for me." And
Hmm.
so the mom came in and talked to a staff member for a while, and the staff member said, there is a way you can do a request for reconsideration, and the mom did. And what happens in Ontario is a small committee is formed of our library board president and two librarians. They read the book, then they make a recommendation to the director. The director then, sends a letter to the person saying what will happen. In this case, she didn't even want to remove the book. She just thought it should be moved. She thought it was in the wrong area.
Hmm.
We look at reviews. They read the book. They decided, there's some delicate topics in here, but it still is for
Well,
that age.
and not for nothing, sometimes we put it in the wrong place. I
Yeah, we
mean,
do. I totally agree with you. That's,
it's a thing.
yes.
Uh, and that I much prefer that they say, "Hey, can we talk about this
Yeah.
book?" than some of the other stuff out there
Yeah.
uh, that has just been kind of horrendous in some places.
No, my first the one before that, a person had brought me a pile of books that she had some problems with, and one of them had been miscatalogued. I said, "Yeah, that's an adult book. That doesn't really go in the teen graphic novels." You're absolutely right. So,
Oh, and graphic novels is one of those areas that you do have to be a little more
yeah,
careful of
yes,
because people evaluate them differently.
exactly.
So, are you still looking for conference presenters, or that's done?
That is done, unfortunately. So if somebody had an idea, they will have to save it till next year. Next year we'll be in Riverside around the same time. So, um, but yes, that has been done since probably January. So,
So, how do they decide where the conference is going to be?
so a lot of that depends on, to be really honest, on money. Um, we Convention centers now will give you a better deal if you book 2 days in a row, two years in a row instead of one.
Oh,
And
right.
so Pasadena was kind of an anomaly. We're only going there once, but we'll be going to Riverside twice. And then we try to go north and south. So I imagine we will go back north. The previous 2 years were at Sacramento, and I imagine we'll end up back in Sacramento.
Hmm. How, do you happen to know off the top of your head how many members you have? And
I,
it's okay if you don't. I would have no clue for
it's
CSLA.
for as big a state it is, it's not as many as you would think. It's somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500, if I remember correctly.
Which I wouldn't be surprised if that's where CSLA is at. They used to be bigger.
Yes, we did too.
Yeah.
I was
Which
just
is what makes the conference thing so challenging.
I was just talking to the executive director of Virginia Library Association, and they did something a couple years ago where if you become an institutional member, all of your librarians and library staff get to become VLA members. And so it's a model I want to look at because now they
Hmm.
have like 5,000 people in there, in VLA, and she said it's been really good for inclusive. It's really inclusive that a
Hmm.
lot of people that made people of color who maybe couldn't afford or it was or whatever are now becoming more involved because they're members. So I'm gonna at least explore it and see if it's a model that will work in California. Who knows?
Every place is always a little different.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
yeah.
Uh, Anything else you'd like to share?
I don't think so. I think Oh yeah, I do. I have one more thing. We've been working with Assembly Member Al Murasucci. He's from Torrance, and he has a bill called the California Freedom to Read Act, and basically it's an anti-book banning bill. And
Hmm.
not only it specifically calls out like maybe a city council or a board of supervisors, they can't come in and remove a book if the library,
Oh,
they
good.
can't override the library. And it also, if a librarian refuses to remove a book from the collection, it protects them from being fired. So the bill is currently in the state senate right now, and actually it has to go back to the assembly and then to the governor um, by in 3 days. So I don't think it's going to make it, but we shall see. But I gotta say, Murasucci sat down with us twice in CLA and for 45 minutes and 30
Wow.
minutes the other time. And the fact that he really, really cares about libraries, and it was just so refreshing. And he went line by line through the bill. Does this work for you guys? Does this work for you guys? What about this? I have some questions about this. It was really cool. He's a great guy.
It's always interesting. Theoretically, lots of people care about libraries,
Yes.
but this goes beyond the theoretical. Is actually moving forward, trying to get something done.
Yes.
Now, much respect for that for sure. So, thank you for being a part of this
Yeah.
podcast. Very much appreciated. Uh, just so you know, this will be up this Thursday uh, in all sorts of places. If you feel free to take any of the podcasts, pull it off YouTube, it will be on YouTube with the video. Whatever you want to do for your organization,
Okay. Thanks.
absolutely. And I'll put a link to your conference in the show notes.
Great.
You still have time to.
Oh yeah. Early bird ends in a couple weeks.
Oh, good.
But we'll take people. They can walk up. It's going to cost them, but they can still walk up. So
Go ahead and do it now, folks.
yeah, do it now.
Early bird is always the way to go. It's always the way to go. So, again, thank you, Shawn. I appreciate you joining us today.
It was fun. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care.